I never expected loneliness to be so ordinary. Not dramatic. Not some big, tragic scene where I'm staring out a rainy window with a sad song playing in the background. It's more like standing in my kitchen, reaching for a second coffee mug out of habit, and then realizing I don't need it. And I just hold that mug for a second too long, like my hands don't know where to put the extra warmth. That's what surprised me. Loneliness didn't show up as an emergency. It showed up as an extra place setting, an extra towel, a quiet little pause in the day where your body does something your life no longer requires. And I'll be honest, I didn't even call it loneliness at first. I called it peace. I said things like, well, I can finally hear myself think. Or, it's nice not having to run around for everybody. And some days, that's true. Some days, it really is peaceful. But then there are other days when it isn't peace at all. It's like the air in the house gets too still. Like the rooms are waiting for something that isn't coming. And you start making noise on purpose. Not because you need it, but because you can't stand hearing the refrigerator click on and off like it's the only living thing keeping you company. I used to think loneliness meant having nobody. Now I think loneliness is when your life stops bumping into other lives. When nobody interrupts you. Nobody needs you. Nobody says your name out loud for a while. And you don't realize how much that matters until it's gone. The other morning, I went to the grocery store early because I always go early now. Not because I'm especially organized. Because later in the day, the aisles feel too crowded and I get tired quicker than I used to, and the prices make me stare at the shelf longer than I want to admit. I was standing there comparing 2 jars of peanut butter like I was solving a math problem, and I caught myself whispering, "No, don't buy the big one. It'll go bad before you finish it." I said it out loud. Not loud enough for anybody to hear, I don't think. But still, and that's when I felt it. That tiny sting. Not in a dramatic way. Just a little flash of awareness. Because there was a time in my life when I wouldn't be talking to myself in a grocery store. I'd be arguing with someone I loved about which peanut butter to buy. Or I'd be tossing the big one in the cart without thinking because somebody at home would eat it in 2 days. Or I'd be grabbing whatever was on sale because the cart was already full and nobody had time to stand there and deliberate. I stood there holding that jar and I thought, so this is what it looks like. Not empty, not abandoned. Just careful. Quiet. Smaller. And what gets you isn't the jar of peanut butter. It's the fact that there's nobody waiting at home to complain about it. When I came back out to the parking lot, I did something I've been doing more lately. I put the bags in the trunk, got in the driver's seat, and just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. I didn't start the car right away. I didn't want to go back to the house yet, and that scared me a little, because I love my home. I've worked hard to keep it. I've patched things, painted things, tightened things, learned the hard way which bills can't be late and which ones you can stretch by 2 days if you have to. I'm not ungrateful, but sitting in that car, I realized something I hadn't wanted to say out loud. Sometimes the quiet inside the house feels heavier than the groceries. It's not that I'm afraid to be alone. It's that I'm tired of being unseen. That's the part nobody prepares you for. Because you think loneliness is about not having someone to talk to. But for me, a lot of it is about not being witnessed. Nobody sees the small things anymore. Nobody notices that you changed the light bulb by yourself, even though the step stool wobbled and your knees complained the whole time. Nobody sees you stand there reading the mail, mentally moving money from one bill to another like you're playing a sad little game of musical chairs. Nobody sees you eat dinner at 5 because you're hungry early now, and you don't feel like cooking when it's dark, and you don't feel like making a real meal just for yourself. So you eat something simple. Eggs, soup, toast. and you do the dishes right away because if you leave them, the sink looks like a judgment. Then you sit down, and the evening is wide open. Not in a fun way, in a way that makes you realize how many years your time belonged to other people. I used to be needed from the moment I opened my eyes. There were lunch boxes and appointments and phone calls and somebody always asking where something was. My day had shape. Now, sometimes my day feels like a long stretch of fabric that doesn't know what it's supposed to become. And people say, "Enjoy it. You earned it." And I understand what they mean. I do. But there's a difference between rest and emptiness. Rest feels like a soft bed. Emptiness feels like a room with no echo, and I didn't expect the emptiness to show up in such small, almost embarrassing places, like the phone. There was a week not long ago when I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. Not in person, not on the phone, not even a real conversation at the checkout, just little polite words. "Thank you. Have a good one." I looked at my call log like it was going to explain something to me, like maybe the phone was broken and that's why it was quiet. But it wasn't broken. It was just quiet. And I know people are busy. I know that. Everyone's got jobs and kids and schedules and their own stress. And I don't want to be the kind of person who sits around feeling sorry for herself. So I told myself I was fine. I made a point of staying productive. I cleaned out a drawer that didn't need cleaning. I rearranged a cabinet. I wiped down the baseboards like I was being inspected. I even folded towels that were already folded. And right there. That's when it hit me again. Because busyness is a funny thing when you're alone. Busyness can look like strength, but sometimes busyness is just a way to avoid sitting still long enough to hear your own heart. I'll tell you something else I didn't expect. Loneliness isn't always sadness. Sometimes it's irritation. It's waking up and realizing you're the only one who's going to deal with whatever breaks today. The faucet drips, and you're the one who has to decide whether it can wait. The heater makes a strange sound, and you're the one who has to decide whether you can afford to call someone. A letter comes in the mail with fine print, and you're the one who has to read it twice because your brain doesn't like small print before breakfast. And there's nobody to say, "Did you see this?" or "What do you think we should do?" It's all you. And if you make the wrong choice, it's still all you. That's a kind of loneliness people don't talk about much. The loneliness of being the only adult in your own life. And that can make you sharp in ways you don't like. I've caught myself getting short with people over nothing. A cashier moves too slowly. Someone blocks the aisle. Someone asks me a question and I answer too briskly. And then I get back in the car and I feel ashamed because I know what's underneath it. It's not anger. It's that I've been carrying the whole weight of my own days by myself, and I'm tired. There's also this strange thing that happens when you live alone long enough. Your world gets quieter, and your memories get louder. You walk past a hallway, and you remember footsteps that used to be there. You open the closet, and there's a coat that hasn't moved in a long time, but you can still picture it on somebody's shoulders. You hear a laugh on the TV, and it reminds you of the laugh that used to come from down the hall. And sometimes it's not even big memories. Sometimes it's the little ones that hurt the most, like reaching for 2 plates again, or buying a pack of something and realizing you'll be eating it for a week because the package isn't made for one person. And that's when the loneliness can feel almost insulting, like the world wasn't built for a life that got smaller. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to feel invisible, not because I need attention, not because I think I'm special, but because for most of my life, my existence mattered to other people every single day. Someone depended on me. Someone noticed me. Someone had to adjust their life around mine. And then, one day, it's like your presence stops creating ripples. You're still here. But the water is calmer, and that can feel like you're fading. I know some of you are nodding right now because you felt that too. And I also know some of you feel lonely even with people in the house. Because loneliness isn't only about being alone. Loneliness is also about not being met, not being understood, not being asked how you really are, not being touched in a way that says, I see you. So when I say, I never expected loneliness to feel like this, I don't mean I expected it to feel worse. I mean I expected it to look obvious. But it doesn't. It looks like a clean house and a quiet calendar. It looks like being capable. It looks like not bothering anyone. And I'll tell you the hardest part. Sometimes the loneliness doesn't even feel like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like you're doing something wrong, like you missed a step, like you should be handling this better, like you should have filled your life with more people, more hobbies, more community, more something. And then you start blaming yourself. You start thinking, maybe I'm just not easy to love, or maybe I'm not important anymore, or maybe this is what happens when you get older. And that's where it gets dangerous, because that kind of thinking doesn't just make you lonely, it makes you small. So here's what I've been learning, slowly and not always gracefully. Loneliness isn't a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you're human. It's your heart telling you, I still want connection. Not noise, not chaos, not constant activity, connection. And I've had to learn to treat that desire with dignity instead of embarrassment. Because I used to think needing people was weakness. Now I think pretending you don't need people is what breaks you. I started doing one small thing that felt ridiculous at first. I started talking to someone on purpose, even if it was brief. Not scrolling, not texting something quick and pretending it counts. I mean actually calling. Or actually stopping to chat for 2 minutes, even if my hair's a mess and I'm wearing the same sweatshirt I slept in. And the first few times I did it, I felt awkward, like I was imposing, like I was a burden. But then I noticed something. Most people are lonelier than they let on. And when you give someone a real moment, an actual human moment, it changes the whole day. I also started doing something else. And this one is quieter. I stopped punishing myself for having evenings that feel empty. Instead of trying to cram them with distractions, I started making them gentler. I light a lamp instead of leaving the overhead light on like I'm in an office. I make tea and actually sit down to drink it instead of carrying it around like a task. I play a little music sometimes, not because I'm trying to fill the silence, but because I want the house to feel lived in. And when the loneliness shows up, I try not to fight it like an enemy. I try to say, all right, you're here today. Not like surrender, like recognition. Because the more I fought it, the bigger it felt. The more I treated it like shame, the more it clung to me. But when I treated it like weather, something that comes and goes, I could breathe again. And here's a truth I didn't expect at this stage of life. Sometimes the person you miss the most is the version of you that used to be surrounded. The version of you that had a role every hour of the day. The version of you that felt necessary. And when that version disappears, it can feel like you disappeared too. So part of what I've been doing is getting to know the person I am now, not the person I used to be, not the person other people needed me to be, just me. And that's not always comfortable, but it's honest. And honesty, at this point, feels better than pretending. I still have lonely days. I still have moments where the silence hits me in the chest for no good reason. I still sometimes sit in the car a little longer than I need to before walking back into the house, but I don't tell myself I'm broken anymore. I tell myself I'm alive. And alive people feel things. Alive people miss things. Alive people still want someone to say, I see you. So if you're sitting there right now and you've been feeling that same quiet kind of loneliness, the kind nobody notices, the kind you can hide behind a clean house and a calm voice, I just want you to know you're not strange for that. You're not weak for that. You're not too old to be feeling this. You're human, and you still matter. And maybe, just maybe, that loneliness is not the end of your story. Maybe it's a nudge, a gentle, inconvenient nudge, back toward people, back toward yourself, back toward the parts of life that still have warmth in them. If you feel like it, tell me in the comments. What does loneliness look like in your day? Is it the mornings, the evenings, the grocery store, the quiet phone? And what's one small thing that helps, even a little? I'll be reading. And if you see someone else in the comments who sounds like they're sitting in that quiet too, maybe leave them a kind word. Sometimes that's enough to make a day feel lived in again. And if you stayed with me this long, thank you. Truly, it means more than you think. Loretta.